So yeah, Bill Kentrup. I'm the co-founder of Allinfra, as well as let me see if I can get, oh, here we go. Also the co-founder of the Ethereum climate platform. We'll talk a little bit about both, but for myself, I'm currently based in Austin, Texas. My business is based in Asia. I was based in Hong Kong for 22 years. And my career has been environmental finance. So for a bank, I ran the environmental commodities business and environmental infrastructure for 8 years. For a commodities group, I set up one of the first carbon finance platforms in Asia back in 2004. We were very active in the clean development mechanism markets, early Kyoto Protocol. And before that, I'm an oceanographer. And so basically most of my life, I've been either out in the environment, figuring out where the issues and opportunities were, and then for the past 25 years or so, financing some of those opportunities. And with Paris Agreement getting signed, the beginning of Allinfra was really looking back at where the friction and pain points and inefficiencies existed in green finance, whether that was for carbon, green debt, green equity, in all of these different types of financial products. The data is a critical piece. So I'll just very quickly mention Allinfra. You could sort of think of us as having two main components of our tech stack. So one is Allinfra Climate, and that's essentially a way in which we get data directly from assets. That's both device-based data, IoT data, together with inputs from third parties, credentialed parties that get credentialed on chain. And then that data gets aggregated. I'll show you a short schematic as to what that looks like, but that's then used for various professional financial use cases. On the right side is Allinfra Digital. So now that's productizing, whether it's tokenized green bonds, tokenized carbon forward agreements, and so forth. So that's Allinfra. Talk a bit about some of the backdrop for why we're doing what we're doing. So I guess I'm not sure about the background of everyone in the audience, but this is just to show that if you look on the left side, the mitigation challenge is massive. So up here is kind of the current trajectory in terms of environmental policy. And we need to get at least 15 to 23 gigatons a year reduced to have even a shot at getting to roughly that 1.5 increase above historic levels. And that's, even at that level, that you're still seeing essentially what we're seeing today in terms of exacerbated extreme climate events. On the right side, though, if you look at these different segments, energy, agriculture, forestry, buildings, transport, industry, these show 12 or so gigawatts, 15 or so gigawatts under the agri and forestry, maybe about another 8 gigawatts of potential, sorry, not gigawatts, gigatons per year of CO2 equivalent. And this gives you a sense of where some of the major emission reductions are, and should come from over time. One of the things I just wanted to flag, and an event that we're doing next week with the UN's Global Innovation Hub. So UNFCCC manages Paris Agreement. The UN Global Innovation Hub is the part of the UN that looks at digital solutions, looks at tech, looks at innovative financial solutions, and brings that into that Paris Agreement framework. So we have an event next week with the Global Innovation Hub. I was brainstorming with Masamba Toyo, who runs that Innovation Hub, last night. And we were really looking at those sectors and thinking about it from a global south perspective. All of these countries that have emerging economies that are at the beginnings of building industry and building their energy systems. And part of the big task that I guess we're trying to help conquer, I guess, with digital solutions is how can we make and future-proof that development and attract green finance, but in a way that then, let's say, the global north and maybe city by city cross-border financing can benefit from the environmental claims that come from those investments. This is just to say that on the left side, you see a bit of a laundry list of carrots and sticks. I'll just maybe flag CBAM, for example, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. That's kicking in, or at least the data measurement side, the carbon accounting side of that starts in 2024, January 2024. The first industry it hits is shipping. So any ships coming into Europe need to track their carbon intensity related to fuel, and then it impacts a laundry list of commodities. And so all of these sectors for imports and incoming ships and products coming into Europe have to track that carbon footprint. And for us, and for all of these different areas of carbon carrots and sticks, it represents carbon risk and carbon opportunity. And we really focus on the opportunity. So when we look at how do we help corporates, how do we engage with the market, where are those hidden carbon opportunities that we can unlock and use digital to really accelerate either financing or help corporates make better decisions. So how is Web3 amplifying climate action? Through better data. So I briefly described this, but just in this schematic, you've got your green assets here. This also could be, on the energy consumption side, like data centers. It could be oil and gas assets. But getting that data into an environment where it's verifiable. The off-device part is reports from third parties. And essentially that data then needs to be packaged up very efficiently for either professional or financial services, carbon accounting, ratings, reporting to bondholders, or environmental financial products. So that's your renewable certificates and your carbon credits. That is just a short description of how we think about getting data on digital rails and using blockchain to create digital identification for the source of data as well as the actual data itself. Now, what I want to show you is how powerful that can be. So this is a wind project. It's the first utility scale wind project in Indonesia. It's a gold standard registered carbon project. So that's gold standard is one of the more rigorous carbon standards. And one of the reasons I set up Allinfra is that, in my various carbon trading books, we'd have 30, 40, 50 projects on the books at any given time. And in every single one, every time we wanted to mint carbon credits or produce credits and bring those to market, it required a third-party validator to come to the site, to collect data, to convert that data into a report, submit that report to gold standard in this case. Often they forgot some data or they didn't check a calibration. They've got to go back to the site. Door to door, usually this validation and verification process takes about 6 to 8 months, depending on how busy the market is, sometimes 5. And generally costs somewhere between $40,000 to $80,000. And so we did a side-by-side. So we connected our system in blue, the digital MRV, and we ran it parallel to a manual MRV process for gold standard carbon credit production. The first month we connected to the asset, it took us a little while to get synced up. We got sort of in line, and over the course of this period, up until the last month, you see, we were hoping that we'd be within 5% of the manual process. MRV, measurement, reporting, and verification. And so we were hoping we'd be within 5% because we figured, look, with the time savings and the cost savings, if we're within 5%, then you can essentially discount the data by 5% or more. And the reason you could take a healthy discount is over here. It reduced the process from months to minutes. Because once we're connected in, the data is ready via API as soon as you want it, up to the last 2 minutes. It reduced the cost from tens of thousands to about $2,000. And very importantly, that manual process is backward looking. By the time you actually produced your credits, you've got one static report good for one use case. In this case, you've got your data in an environment that's accessible constantly, and you can use it for carbon accounting, seeking green ratings, and so forth. So this gives you one of the most commonly cited reasons for Kyoto not getting extended. So the intent was to extend it after 2012, was because this stuff was so hard, because all these people invested in these carbon projects. They had either compliance obligations, or for us, as essentially a carbon finance trader in the middle, we had back-to-back contracts. If we were late, we faced liquidated damages. And so we've got this opaque, backward-looking process to get the credits out of the project. So much of the industry said, look, we're not going to do that again unless there's a way to fix that. And so now the standards have gone from 3-4 years ago when we were pitching to them taking it digital. It was met with very strong resistance. And now all of the carbon standards and lots of the sort of traditional infrastructures trying to make digital their competitive advantage slowly, and in pieces and much slower than we'd like, but they've kind of rounded the bend to seeing this sort of model as kind of the de facto path. So another way is through better product. And I'll just quickly mention here an example of two projects that we worked on. There we go, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So Genesis 1, the client in Genesis 1 and 2 was a Bank of International Settlements, so the central bank of the global central banks. And in Genesis 2, in Genesis 1, the co-client was Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Genesis 2, it was the UNFCCC. And what that was, Genesis 1 was, can we take a traditional green bond, can we wrap it in a tradable digital wrapper? So can we essentially tokenize the green bond? And instead of, often for green bonds or blue bonds, but sustainable finance, you have the use of proceeds that's tracked and not a lot of aftercare, not a lot of review of is the asset actually having the impact that was intended on the basis of the bond. So what BIS wanted to do is, one, tokenize the bond so that you could distribute it to retail, as well as have data feed, digital data feed. So if I'm holding a bond token, I get data feed from the asset on an ongoing basis so I can see that impact. That was a big success in 2021. 2022, what that added on, Genesis 2, was, and this is why the UNFCCC came in, that had a stapled product together with the green bond, so same as Genesis 1, with a tokenized carbon forward agreement. So that carbon forward agreement, meaning I'm committing to purchasing the carbon credits over, let's say, 5-7 years, that product is stapled to the bond, and that in that project was called an MOI, a mitigation outcome interest, a legal interest in the future mitigation outcomes. As the holder of that instrument, I'm entitled to the future carbon credits that come from that project. The data feed then essentially fills up each MOI in vintages. So if I hold a 2024 MOI or 2025, I get settled in those years. And in essence, it's taking what is a traditional paper contract, an emission reduction purchase agreement, and a product that's issued on a registry somewhere and just your name's next to it. This actually, the product becomes filled with the data that then can sit right in your carbon accounting books. It can be traced back 3 years later. You know exactly what device it came from on the asset. And just maybe in the limited time, I'll just mention that on the back of that, this project has gained, or created a lot. It's become a bit of a beacon in the green bond space. So we're part of a task force between the PRC and Singapore government. So on the Singapore side, it's the Monetary Authority of Singapore and OCBC and Accenture. On the China side, it's Bank of China and PBOC, the Policy Bank of China, and the Beijing Green Exchange. And what they're essentially doing is looking to replicate this structure, this Genesis 2 structure, by customizing it for cross-border green finance, in the Singapore case, cross-border finance in and out of Singapore, and likewise on the China side. So that is a very Web3 take on what is a massive market. It's not just, let's say, the carbon credit piece, it's the bond piece, which is, a very large market. You need about some of the estimates, $7 trillion of climate-aligned infrastructure financing per year to have, again, a shot at hitting some of those, those carbon or those temperatures that we're trying to keep to. So I've got a bunch more that I was planning to show, but I sort of overestimated what I was going to be able to go through. So I'll leave it there. But thanks everybody.